Hey guys, my name is Lauren. Welcome to Queenpin. This week I'll be teaching you how to make a flower cookie bouquet, and it's Mother's Day this weekend, so the timing couldn't be better. Let's get started. Okay, so as usual, I have a few odd shapes that I will put templates for down in the description below. This is one of them. This is my leaf shape, and I am outlining and flooding with a white first before adding any leaf details. So I'm making 5 total leaf shapes. 3 of them I made facing left and 2 of them I made facing right. So once you're done flooding, let that dry in front of a fan and we'll make our stiff peak consistency icing for the leaf details and the flower details. So you really want a stiff peak consistency so when you pull your beater out, the icing doesn't move at all. That's what's really gonna hold the shape of your detailed pieces like the leaves and like the flowers. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and color the green for my leaves. I'm using Leaf Green by Americolor. Obviously use that bottle a lot, and I'm adding some royal blue as well. And we're gonna mix. I'm going for more of a teal color, not so much this grass green that I ended up with. So I'm adding more blue. You can make whatever color you want. So I don't add any water to this. I keep it that stiff peak consistency. And instead of using a metal tip, I just cut my disposable bags and I use my scissors and I cut a little V shape. The closer to the tip of the bag you cut it, the smaller your hole will be and the smaller your leaf shape will be. Okay, so I'm using a detail consistency royal icing to make my little line here, and then I'm coming back in with my stiff peak consistency and my trimmed tip, and I'm going and I'm making my leaf shapes. This one is going to be a palm leaf, so I'm just making the individual leaf shapes. So I made 2 of the palm leaf shapes, and I ended up making 3 of the eucalyptus leaf shapes, and those will be the next cookies that we look at. For the eucalyptus leaves, I'm creating little stems here, and I'm going to add the individual leaves. I'm using one consistency here. It's sort of in between a flood and a detail consistency. I'm gonna show you the blue that I end up making for the vase shape. So for that, I'm just taking electric blue and adding that to my stiff peak consistency icing. That's how I always start all of my colors, adding it to the stiff peak consistency first, getting it the color I want, and then adding water. I wanted it a little bit more blue. So when I'm making pastel colors, I really only add small bits of food coloring at once so that I don't go too dark too quick. Here I'm using my stealthy little clear pipette to add a small amount of water to the frosting. Like the food coloring, it's easier to add small amounts and not overdo it and just keep adding. So I'm trying to make a detail consistency royal icing that bends over when you kind of pick it up, so it'll hold its shape but it flows out nicely. So I'm going to take a little bit out and bag that. And then I'm going to add some more water to the rest of the blue and make it a flood consistency. So that's that self-leveling loose consistency that I use for backgrounds. You'll be able to see it kind of ribbon off of the spatula here into the bag. Okay, so we're gonna make our outline, and instead of just doing it all one color with no details at all, we're still gonna do it one color, but we're going to create a little bit of a shape here. So I'm using my detail consistency to make outlines, how I'm gonna fill. And then my flood consistency, I'm gonna fill these individual shapes alternating. So I'm going to let them dry slightly and then add the shapes in between, if that makes sense. And that way they won't just all flood together, they won't all flow together, they'll create this nice little pattern. Okay, so I've let that dry a little bit, not totally, just enough to let it keep its shape. So now I'm filling in the areas that I hadn't before and using my scribe to really push it into the little spaces. And I'll have all of my templates and equipment that I used and food coloring down in the description below in case you do want to recreate this for yourself. Okay, so that is our little vase shape. And now I'm moving on to circles. So the circles are what I'm using for my flower cookies. I made 6 different circles, but I made them in different sizes. So I bought this set of 12 cookie cutters, and I'll put the link below. So I just used 3 circle cutters from this set, and it made it super easy for me. And we're gonna let that white flood dry in front of a fan before adding a flower on top of it. Okay, so now I'm gonna be showing you how I pipe my flowers. I did a couple different flowers for this set, and I was letting my white flooded circles dry while I made my flowers. So I ended up using a little template here just to guide me size-wise. For this flower, I'm gonna use stiff peak consistency, and I'm gonna be using a metal tip to create my shape. And I'm putting the skinny side up while I pipe my flowers. Okay, so you do that and you kind of wobble it 3 times and 3 times. And so for this first layer of petals, I'm just going around the outside of the shape. I'm gonna want my flowers to kind of go over what my cookie size is. I want as little white showing as possible in the final product, so I want my flower shapes nice and big. So now I'm creating another ring of smaller petals in the center here, and I'm leaving the very, very center blank. I'm gonna add a yellow center to it a little bit later. Okay, so here's that yellow stiff frosting, stiff peak consistency frosting. So I'm just doing a big circle in the center. And then just putting little, I don't know what to call them, little blops, I don't know, little dudes all around the center. You flower people know what these things are called. So just a little bit of detail and that flower's done. So now we are moving on to a different flower shape. I'm still using that same tip as before, the 123 Wilton tip with the skinny side up. And I'm just not wobbling it the 3 times for each petal, and it creates a different shape, a more simple looking flower. This one's a little easier to start with if you're new to making florals. I ended up not liking the amount of white that I could see still left on this cookie. I wanted my flower shape to be bigger. So with these, if you realize you've messed up, just take a knife, scrape off what you've done before it dries, and you can always go over it. It's not a big deal. All right, take 2. So this time I'm just going a little over the edge, and I'm leaving a lot less white margin on the side. And I'm gonna be way happier. If I were just doing standalone flower cookies, it wouldn't have been a big deal, but because I'm trying to achieve a bouquet look, I want as little margin left as possible. So that's why I did that. Okay, and then I'm just gonna add a couple little dots in the center and call it a day. All right, flower number 3 is a little bit more of a yellow daisy-ish flower. So this time I'm using a slightly smaller tip. This is the Wilton 102 tip, and I'm adding more petals on this flower, so I wanted them to be a little bit smaller. Again, the skinny side is up for these. And with all of these transfers, the floral transfers, if you're not putting them directly on a cookie, what you want to do is you want to let them completely dry, which might take as much as 24 hours, maybe a little less if you put them in front of a fan. Let them completely dry, and then once they're dry, They'll lift off of the parchment paper really easily, and then you just add a dab of royal icing underneath them and use that to be your glue to attach them to the cookie. It's super easy. I'm just adding the little center here, and I decided to do a brown center and then a ring of little yellow dots around that brown center. Detail is everything, guys. But if you're just starting out and you don't want to make it that detailed, you don't have to. You could honestly just leave these without the centers and they would still be beautiful. Okay, so I made this little weird shape and it's supposed to hold 3 mini flowers. So that's what the weird shape is. So we're just flatting it, letting that dry, and then we'll add our special little flowers on top of it once it's dry. For these little flowers, I decided that I wanted them to be extra fancy and detailed. So I wanted 2 colors within 1 petal. So I want them to be both pink and white. So I'm gonna show you how I do that. I add the leftover pink royal icing from my previous cookie in a strip down the icing bag at one of the seams, and then I fill up the rest of the bag with this white. I make sure that I line up the seam of the Wilton tip with the seam of the bag so that that pink stays in exactly where I want it to. It does make a big difference whether or not you put your pink at the fat end of the tip or at the skinny end of the tip, and I'll show you what both of those look like. If you put the pink at the skinny end of the tip, then you'll end up with a flower that looks almost outlined in the pink. Since the skinny tip is going up, that'll be the outline. If I put it on the fat end, the pink will be coming from the center of the flower. And that's actually what I wanted. So that's what we'll do on the cookie. So now we're just gonna add them directly onto the cookie using the pink at the fat end. So I'm gonna start on one edge and then kind of overlap over that other flower that we just did. And then one more, overlap a little bit. So I made 2 cookies with this shape. Okay, so now that we've made all of the cookies, it's time to assemble the bouquet. And obviously you can place anything wherever you want. There are no rules. Just pile all of the cookies on top of each other until they look pretty. Then stand back, admire your work, take a picture, and bring it to your mother. This weekend's Mother's Day, for heaven's sake. If you enjoyed this tutorial, then please hit like and share this video with a friend. When you post a picture of your own cookie bouquet, be sure to tag me so that I can see it. My handle is @QueenpinKitchen. Happy Mother's Day, guys. Thanks for watching. Bye.